Well, here today, I'm here to talk about using Docker events in Node. So first of all, a little context. What am I doing with all this? I work for a company called GridPlus. We are a blockchain energy IoT company. We are working on a consumer electronics device that will basically give you everything you need to run a personal cryptocurrency bank in your home. So obviously, it's pretty critical to us that we can deploy software safely and reliably to this thing, and it will stay up and running. Our first product, Lattice One, pictured here. So to do this, we decided to go with Docker and Docker Compose to orchestrate our services. This gives us a few key benefits. We have the normal streamlined Docker workflow, all the good isolation type stuff it gives you. It also gives us parity between our cloud environment and our device. So we can basically develop our code, test it in the cloud, test it on our machines, and push it to this embedded device and have the confidence that it's going to run the exact same way, as well as it gives us some nice deployment features to piggyback off of, including secure signing using Docker Content Trust, which on the back end is actually Notary, which hooks in with our whole system to make sure we can deploy things securely. So why Docker Compose with all of this? There are lots of services to orchestrate Docker containers. We knew that we were going to have a collection of microservices which were necessary to deploy this thing. But things like Docker Swarm or Kubernetes don't really fit well on an embedded device. So something a little more lightweight, something that runs on ARM, gives us privileged access to low-level hardware that we're going to need to do some of the crypto signing our device will be capable of. Is pretty necessary. So that's why we're using Docker. And then, although Docker Compose gives you a lot, it doesn't quite give you everything you need to maintain the health of a remote device that will be running unsupervised for a period of time. So that's where Docker events come in. What are Docker events? Docker events is an API that the Docker engine exposes, which basically gives you a message about every single thing that the Docker engine does. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Docker, the Docker engine is basically the server process that manages everything that goes on your Docker host. And for us, the most important stuff is pretty much the container lifecycle, or in other words, the container circle of life: start, health check. Losing this one. All right, better? Oh yeah, okay, that works. Yeah, so Docker events will basically give you a message about everything that happens on your Docker host. So let's see what that looks like. This is the Docker events schema. Everybody see that okay? Essentially, this is what the basic schema will look like. This is one for a container. Each type of event, whether it be a volume or a network or some other type of resource that Docker manages, will have a slightly different schema. Interesting stuff to know about this schema. If you're going to use it in the wild, it's an open schema according to Docker, which means they may add fields, but they will never remove them. So if you're going to use it, pick out an individual field instead of trying to parse the entire thing as a whole. The events vary a little bit by event type. The really key field here is action, which tells you what's happening with this type of resource. So in this case, a container is being created. But you'll see in the documentation things like health check status listed. That's not an actual event type that will come through. It'll come through as health check status : healthy, or health check status : unhealthy. So that's a subtle gotcha. Another cool thing about this schema is you can see this com.example.sum label value coming through. And that's actually custom metadata that you can pass through to Docker Compose. So if you're going to build something fancy, do some orchestration of the underlying hardware based on what your containers are doing, that's a good place to hook into that. Yeah, but how does Node come to play in all this? So basically, I built a little library that exposes the Docker Events API as a Node event emitter. So anything that comes through as an event will get passed up into Node, and you'll be able to respond to it by the type of action that it is directly in Node.js. So this is pretty similar to the code we're going to be running to manage these devices. Essentially, it reacts to the important events in a container's lifecycle. If a container becomes unhealthy, we'll try to repair it. If a container dies, we'll try to repair it in a somewhat different way. Container becomes healthy, we'll reset the counters for its death, and upon a container starting, we just log it so that we know everything is going swimmingly. So cool. I thought from here, I will just give you a look at the code. That comes up. Everybody read that okay? Cool. Yeah, so pretty much got the imports up here. It's a class called Docker event emitter. This constructor is setting it up as an event emitter, setting up some blank data initially, and then calling the main function, spawn Docker events. And this is kind of the meat of where it gets the events from. Essentially, it's calling out to the command line here. This scrish-f is a little trick to get it to flush the output buffer immediately upon being sent, so that we get a less weird output coming in through node. And this Docker events command line is from the CLI. It'll format it as JSON. Here we go. Set encoding, error handling, and then taking the data coming back from the CLI on standard out and going to parse it. So this is necessary to handle some of the weirdness of what comes back from the CLI. If the data is undefined, it'll just exit out and wait for the next message. Sometimes you can get 2 lines coming back from the Docker Events API. It essentially returns lines of JSON. So if there's multiple lines coming back at once or a line and a half, this will split them, ensure that there were more than one coming through, and then pass them back through this same function recursively to make sure we're only processing a single line at a time. Assuming we've got that single line, this will concatenate it with the previous line, which starts off blank, to make sure that if we get a partial line, what actually fully comes through is a complete line and valid JSON. So here we'll try to parse it, assuming it's valid. This will complete. The data, this.data will get reset to blank, and then we parse out the event type, which comes from that action field in the schema. And then here is where it gets emitted to Node, where you can pick it up and do what you will with it. So yeah, let me show you guys a quick demo of how this looks in action. Yeah, that would help. Oh. Okay. Can you hear me? Cool. Okay. So here I've got a little demo program. It's pretty much the code you saw on that second to last slide. And what this will do, we'll start up the event emitter, wait for any Docker events to be coming through on my system. Right now, nothing is happening, but I can start a container here, which has been engineered to have a health check, which is going to fail pretty quickly. So focused McNulty, great container name. Oh yeah. Yeah, so basically you can see here, if we just stop it, it dies, it gets restarted, it starts up, becomes unhealthy, it dies, it gets restarted, and this is all orchestrated by Node, just picking up on these events and calling out to restart the container as needed. Yeah, if we run it with debug, we can see a little more of what it's doing. Messages getting emitted, so you can see you get this entire packet back, and based on the information in here, you can do whatever you like with this information. So that's pretty much how it looks. Basically what we're doing with it, take this. Basically what we're doing with it is making sure that when containers become unhealthy or die, they're restarted. We count the failures. In the worst case, we try to roll them back to a previous version to get things working. And Sorry. Yeah, can you guys hear me? Cool. Okay. In the worst case, we roll things back, or we'll just send a message to notify us what to do about it. So yeah, that's basically it. Happy to answer any questions you guys got. Sort of finer grained control of how that operates. So Docker Compose gives you certain things out of the box. Like if health check becomes unhealthy, I believe it will just report that to you. So it's up to you to restart it or choose what to do. It won't really be smart enough to like roll back the containers. So this sort of gives you control. There are other systems like Docker Swarm that will automatically respond to unhealthy stuff, but that's not a fit for your architecture. Yep. Here, but it will run as on ARM as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I thought about running this inside a container and mounting the hosts of our run Docker sock to talk to the engine. And yeah, that's exactly how I'm planning on running it. No, this is running on my local machine, but yeah, I have done it that way.